Hey guys, I'm Untitled Chapter, and this is the new Flip 5. I've had it for a few days now, and I have some thoughts. I've been surprised by a few things, impressed and also disappointed by a couple of things, and for a bit of context to see how much better or maybe not better it is, I've also got the Flip 4 here. In fact, I've got the Flip 3 and the Flip 2, and I've just ordered the original Flip because I'm going to do a separate video comparing all the Flips to see how far we've come in the last 4 years, I think it is. But for this video, I'm going to compare the 5 to the 4 a little bit because actually there are a few upgrades I didn't realize. For example, did you know that the Flip 5 is actually a couple of hundred nits brighter? They didn't really talk about that with the Flip at the launch. They said how the Fold was brighter, but I measured both in HDR outside, and this peaked at 1600 nits, thereabouts, and this was like 1400 nits. Not exactly a huge difference, but a minor upgrade nonetheless. Now, speaking of minor upgrades, Samsung do say they have improved the crease a little bit with the Flip 5, but for the life of me, I can't see it, I can't feel it. I actually had my brother Pete, who works with me, come in and do a blind test with both the Fold 5 and the Flip 5 versus their predecessors, and I didn't know which one was in front of me. I just got my fingers out, which sounds a little bit weird, and I was just sort of feeling around to see if I could identify which was which. And actually I did correctly guess the Fold 5 versus the 4. It does have a slightly less pronounced crease, but I could not tell any difference at all between the 4 and 5, both look and feel, which is a little bit disappointing because obviously with the Flip compared to the Fold, your finger does run over that crease quite a bit more. And I guess my main problem with the crease is that compared to the Oppo N2 Flip, it is a world of difference. This doesn't really feel like it has a crease at all, and it came out 6 months earlier. I hope they would improve this. Sticking with the design, and obviously this new zero gap flex hinge is a big upgrade. It means for the first time on a Samsung Flip, it can fold fully flat, although there's a tiny little gap at the top there, but not really. It basically is completely flat, which is good in terms of durability because you're less likely to get dirt and sand and whatever else in between the two, so it's not going to scratch. Also, the screen is stronger this year, the UTG glass, and we have Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the front here with the much bigger cover screen, as you can see. So that is a nice upgrade, and of course they've also been able to make it 2mm thinner, although the same weight. So a little bit less chunky than before, but still obviously a good deal thicker than your regular phone. This is the S23 Ultra for comparison. So I probably wouldn't rush out and buy this just for that zero gap hinge, but what I would rush out and buy it for is this much bigger cover screen, which makes this guy, the 1.8 inch, I think, cover screen on the Flip 4 look kind of like a joke, especially when you're going to use it with the rear cameras and you try to look at yourself, you need a pair of binoculars really. This transforms how you can use the Flip, because really the big selling point for me with the Flip and to some extent the Fold is that you can use the rear cameras as your selfie camera. You can hold it out in front of you or place it down with flex mode, however you like, and you can use the superior rear cameras to take photos and videos. And it is an absolute joy to use. We have about a dozen widgets or so, which you can toggle on or off, so you can just have the ones that you use. Plus you've got your infinitely customizable home screen, you have a notification page, and also an app page. Now this is what I was most interested in to see what apps would be supported, because unlike say the Moto Razr 40 Ultra that gives you infinite access to all the apps on the cover screen, although of course your experience will vary because very few apps are optimized for this kind of aspect ratio, but all apps work. The thing is though, the bigger cover screen is obviously much nicer for using these widgets and a handful of apps, and also as a viewfinder for your camera, but it's also a way of adding a ton of personality to your phone, because the amount of customization that you can do to this home screen is insane. From adding your own photos, gradients between colors, the different widgets you can add. You could literally spend hours with this, playing around with the cover screen and just making it exactly how you like it. And I think for a lot of people, this customization, this personality, this fun that you can have with the Flip 5 makes this a lot more tempting of an upgrade over just another regular big glass rectangle. Couple of small issues though. Firstly, this is a 60 Hz display compared to the 1 to 120 Hz on the inside. So not only is this faster, more importantly, it's more efficient because it can go down to as low as 1 Hz for like an always on display. Whereas this, I think, is stuck to 60 Hz. So not as great for battery efficiency. The other thing I've noticed is that when I do unflip this guy or unfold it, whatever you want to call it, it kind of goes to like 179 degrees as opposed to like 180 and completely flat. It's not as bad as the Pixel Fold where you really do have to sort of yank it back to fully open the screen. Not a deal breaker by any stretch, but I have noticed it, although if you do open your phone in a really cool way like that every time, it's not a problem. So far so good, but let's talk about performance, because the 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy that we have in here is a decent step up over the 8 Plus Gen 1 that we had in the Flip 4. How much of an improvement? Well, I ran 3D Mark Wildlife Stress Test, which runs for 20 minutes. It's around 31% faster in terms of graphics, and this does seem to equate to a higher FPS in games as well. However, there may be a slight issue with the Flip 5's throttling. I opened up Premiere Rush and loaded in an identical 4K 60 1-minute clip on both and exported it, timed how long it took, and interestingly, the Flip 4 won. Now, I actually did the same test with a 20-second clip and the Flip 5 won quite significantly. I think more testing needs to be done though, because in that 20-minute 3D Mark test, even while we did see a lower stability score, therefore more throttling on the Flip 5, the lowest score was still higher than the lowest score on the Flip 4. So it does suggest that overall the Flip 5 is a decent step up in terms of power, but I am still a little bit concerned about that throttling. And it could be down to not only the more powerful chip, but also being a bit thinner, and this form factor, there's simply less room for heat dissipation. Now, as for battery life, if you were hoping for a big upgrade over the Flip 4, you're going to be disappointed, because it's pretty much bang on the same. While in the 3D Mark test it did use 1% more, 12 versus 11 I think it was, on the Flip, I ran a whole bunch of real world tests after that, including YouTube, camera tests, a bit of gaming, and they were neck and neck the whole time. They do have the same size 3700 mAh cell, so I didn't expect much of an upgrade, and of course the new chip is more powerful, but then it's also supposed to be more efficient. However, so far, subject to any optimizations that it can make over time as I use it and any future updates, currently the Flip 5 battery is basically exactly the same as the Flip 4, which is fine, but it's not great. It'll get you through a full day, but not much beyond that, which is a bit of a shame. One of the biggest questions I had though about the Flip 5 is, would the cameras be any better? Because on paper, the hardware is basically exactly the same as last year. We still have the same 12 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel ultra wide, same sensors, same aperture, although the internal selfie camera does have a slightly wider aperture now. But I was curious how much of an improvement would we actually see in terms of the camera? And the answer is, more than I expected actually. It does seem to be a decent step up, although I do have one big problem with this, which I'm going to come to in a second. In terms of photography, as I say, we have the same sensors, but the improved ISP on the 8 Gen 2 chip, the Flip 5 does seem to offer more detail, more texture. I think the skin tones, particularly my face, appear a bit more natural. And actually, despite still not having a telephoto lens, if I zoom in to 10 times on this Swan, you can see while they still both look pretty rough, the Flip 5 is a marked upgrade. Although sadly, this upgrade to the zoom quality does not seem to apply to video at all. Again, here at 10 times, it's arguably worse, but certainly not better. There also doesn't appear to be any change to the sort of shutter speed or, taking fast motion shots, which is always something I hope Samsung do work on. And in some cases, photos can come across a little bit darker, a little bit more muted perhaps versus the Flip 4. But I still think overall the Flip 5 is a surprisingly decent upgrade over the 4 in terms of photos. But then let's switch over to video. A couple of things that have changed this year. If you go into the video settings and then tap the cogwheel, you will see in the advanced video options this new high bitrate video option, which you do see on, say, the S23 Ultra, but only for pro videos, not regular videos, and it's not something you get on the Flip 4. And actually, I shot a bit of a video side by side with the two. Let me know what you think of the difference here with this high bitrate. And certainly a high bitrate can make a big difference to video quality, but looking at these two side by side, I can't really see that much difference. Another thing I've noticed is that this cover screen window, this sort of dual screen preview where your subject, in this case you, can see yourself and I'm filming it from the other side, this does not support 4K 60. Switching up to the higher frame rate, it goes black. You can't use it, which is a bit disappointing because I do personally shoot 4K 60 for my videos and also my socials. The other slight issue, although arguably it was actually a better design choice, is that if you want to shoot landscape videos, so like this, and you want to take advantage of the flex mode and do this sort of thing, then you have to change the aspect ratio to 16:9, but then you are limited to just full HD resolution. There are no 4K options in this mode. So what it means is the Flip 5 is better suited to shooting vertical video for your Instagrams and your TikToks and all that. And so if you go back to the 9:16 aspect ratio, you can then go up to 4K 30 or 60. My biggest problem is I just don't think the quality is that good. Over the last few days, I've shot quite a few clips with this, and in fact, I wanted to intro my video and do a few bits to camera with this, but I just haven't been impressed with the quality at all, whether it's the stabilization, the dynamic range, the relatively narrow field of view. I mean, maybe I'm expecting too much, and certainly it's not any worse than last year with the Flip 4, but given that this is halfway between a S23 Plus and S23 Ultra in terms of price, and with that cover screen and the flex mode and all the options that you have to film with this, the quality just lets it down. I think there may be a cat hiding behind the door. Okay, let me give you a bit of a behind the scenes tour of the studio while I test the video side by side. I'll also be switching between the audio on the two, and also this is being shot in the high bitrate mode on the Flip 5 because I don't know why you wouldn't unless you're running out of storage. So this is the studio, which is a bit of a mess right now, as you can probably tell. Got the old Tech Chap sign, which it looks to be a little bit less kind of blown out on the Flip 5. Seems to be handling that a touch better, but you can never really rely on what you see on the screen preview because a lot of the processing is done after you finish recording or after you take the picture. This is one of the coolest things I've got in the office. This is the Sisyphus, I think I'm saying it right, Sisyphus, Sisyphus little table which has sand in it and a little ball goes around and makes patterns. Yeah, so what do you think of the video between the Flip 4 and the Flip 5? Let me know in the comments. Regardless, this is still a lovely phone to use, and I do love Samsung's software. I think they are still the best when it comes to flipping and folding UIs. You have a ton of options within the cover screen settings. You can change the widgets, you can toggle which apps are allowed on the cover screen and which apps use the flex mode, so when you fold it, if anything changes, although mostly it's just useful for the camera and YouTube app. Beyond that, I don't really tend to use flex mode that much, other than just the advantage of it being its own stand for the camera. And I must admit, I do quite like this taller 21:9 aspect ratio. Obviously, most apps we use, whether it's websites or social media apps, are all scrolling, so you get more on the screen. It also means you have a little bit more room for having a couple of apps side by side on top of each other. And if you want, using the Edge panel, you can actually sort of save a couple of apps and then just with one press bring it up. So some nice multitasking ability there. And also another little upgrade with the Flip 5 is that the USB-C port now supports display out, so you can hook it up to a TV or say your X-Real Air glasses, which I did a video on recently. Couldn't do that before, although one thing we still don't have support for on the Flip is DeX. So to wrap up this sort of initial review, I do still think the Flip 5 is a marked step up over the Flip 4. The zero gap hinge, the tougher, more durable glass, the slight improvement to brightness, the faster chip, the improved camera quality, albeit primarily for photography, and of course that massive cover screen, which really is the selling point for the Flip 5. Video quality still isn't very good. The crease hasn't changed at all, really. The battery is the same, and it is also a little bit more expensive, although they have dropped the 128 gig model now. It starts with 256. But I do still think for flip phones, if you want a flippable, foldable, then this is probably the best one on the market. And this cover screen definitely makes it worth an upgrade if you have an older model. But what do you think? Are you tempted to buy the Flip 5? Are you impressed by the upgrades? Or do you think you might skip this year? Let me know what you make of the Flip and also the Fold in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed the video and want to see more from me, and I'll catch you next time right here on the Tech Chat. I've just chucked it on the floor. Let's see how that new Gorilla Glass stands up. And we're good.